Die Winterreise is one of Elfriede Jelinek's most personal theater texts. Schubert's Winterreise is a cycle of songs Jelinek often accompanied on the piano. In the text, from we have just heard an excerpt, Jelinek combines the motive of the Wanderer from Schubert's song cycle with her father's dementia. The father was a central figure in Jelinek's life, also for her writing. Her father, who was Jewish, passed on his love for language to her, also the humor, the linguistic wit. When her father fell ill with dementia, he developed an urge to wander, which is typical for this disease. As a result, the family was forced to have him sent to Steinhof, which is an insane asylum in Vienna. Elfriede Jelinek has written about this personal tragedy in several of her texts, including Winterreise. I recently read an interesting essay written by Rebecca Solnit, who is an American writer, journalist, and cultural historian. Wanderlust, a history of walking. Rebecca Solnit creates a fascinating portrait of the range of possibilities presented by walking. She profiles some of the most significant walkers in history and fiction, finding a profound relationship between walking and thinking and walking and culture. She writes, "The rhythm of walking creates a kind of rhythm of thoughts. This creates a strange correspondence between inner and outer movement, which suggests the idea that the mind is a kind of landscape and that walking is a form of moving through it. One aspect of the history of walking is therefore the history of concrete thinking." In Elfriede Jelinek's text, which can also be understood as a landscape of speaking and thinking, the wanderer becomes more and more disorientated. The text, which can be read as an inner monologue, the speaking self describes its loss of language and also its loss of the word. This loss destroys his identity. He asks twice who I am. In this moment, we have a musical intervention. Julia, you have composed the music we hear during the reading. Please tell us about the music and the connection between music and text.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Karoline, for introducing us to the text of Elfriede Jelinek's Winterreise. And I would like to explain a little bit how we found a connection and a link between the text and the music, which you will hear today. First of all, there is a thematical link. The piano piece, which you're going to hear in excerpts, is a pre-study to one of my orchestra pieces, which is called Farewell, Lady, Farewell. And as you might already say from the title, it's dealing with the farewell of a lady, and this lady is old and suffers from dementia. So it's a very similar problem to what Elfriede Jelinek is artistically dealing in her text, The Winterreise. And musically, I tried to catch the theme of dementia by describing the loss of the personality with different musical means. For instance, I used many strands of melodies and musical ideas that merge or diverge. You will be able to hear that in the first part where the piano enters. There are different layers of personalities that come into the music and that leave the music without interconnecting to each other. Another thought that was very important for my music was the idea of sensual memory, which is still working for people with dementia. So very often they remember songs, poems, melodies, smells, sometimes only fragments of them, but they really have them inside the body somehow. And another thing is that the emotional effect that this illness has on a person very often leads, as Karoline already said, to restlessness, to walking. And at the same time, also aggression could could be an effect that certain patients are suffering from. Some of them also depression, which is the, let's say, opposite of doing something, of being in progress. Depression takes you back. So this motive of restlessness, but at the same time resting, is some motive that can be really found in Schubert's Winterreise with the motive of wandern, hiking or walking. And I tried to find out with which compositional techniques Schubert is able to express this idea. And I would like to focus on something which is called rhythmized harmony. Rhythmized harmony is responsible for the inner movement of music, which is the element that keeps music in progress and at the same time creates also the space for the music. So very often rhythmized harmony is the basis for the texture of a musical piece. Elfriede Jelinek is mentioning in her text about Schubert that Schubert creates this kind of vacuum. I would understand this vacuum in a way that it kind of tears the person who is listening to the music into the music. But at the same time, I would also like to point out a little different opinion of Morton Feldman, the American, one of the most important American composers of the 20th century, who says that the interesting thing about Schubert is how he creates atmosphere. Atmosphere can be understood as some kind of mood, emotion, but it can also be understood in the original sense as air, vapor, which is inside a certain covering, so it's some kind of sphere or ball, which is organic, so it helps to have things growing. And it is very compact, everything put together. And if we associate this with the music of Schubert, it is often referred to the heartbeat, the pulse, or walking in general. And I would like to give a few examples for rhythmized harmony out of the Winterreise, which show how extremely diverse Schubert handled this idea. The number one of his cycle, Fremd bin ich eingezogen. Here he creates a very regular and even pulse of 8 notes with almost no interruption of the uniformity of the structure. Sometimes he takes little elements out from the melody and woves them into the texture, but they don't hinder the flow. This is a very, very typical example of even flow and of a regular pulse. We can find that in many pieces of Schubert. Another example is number 3, Gefrorene Tränen. Here, Schubert stops the pulse. He uses an alla breve bar and has a stop on the second quarter beat, which is also a little syncope in a way, but especially as he puts an accent on this note, it's really a very audible stop of the music, which is, apart from this stop, just a gentle, regular quarter beat. This is the musical pendant to the idea of freezing, gefrorene Tränen, frozen tears. So this is this idea of stopping something and defrosting it at the same time. Number 7, Auf dem Flusse. Here we find a much more intensive flow. The texture is divided into 8 notes between the right hand and the left hand of the pianist. This creates anyway a more vivid structure with also a bigger space ambitus between the 2 hands. The rhythm of this structure accelerates to 16ths, triplets, and even 32nd notes. This permanent increasement is used to express the flow and urgency of the music. So we found 3 different ways of creating this texture by using rhythmical elements in combination with the harmony. These are just a few examples to show the means Schubert makes use of to create a diverse texture, which always leads to a special atmosphere. And resting and restlessness are being put together in a special form of synthesis, which can be found in this motive of hiking, wandern, with Schubert. And my piano piece picks up this idea of creating a texture atmosphere. So there is a double connection to the Winterreise of Elfriede Jelinek, which was not intentionally, because when I wrote the piece, I wasn't aware of the text of Elfriede Jelinek. But when we created a musical intervention for this text, it kind of immediately struck me that it could fit perfectly well together. So, firsthand, there is a personal interest in dementia and loss of personality, emotional struggles of these patients, or also of family members who are losing a beloved relative to this illness. And second, creating a Schubertian atmosphere of keeping a texture diverse and alive, create an organic atmosphere. These are two elements that link the music to this text. And I will hand over to Karoline now for the last words.
Oh, thank you very much. That's all very interesting, and thank you for the remarks. So let me add a note about the connection between Jelinek's text and Schubert's music, because there's also a thematic connection between Schubert's and Jelinek and Schubert's Winterreise. Jelinek describes her love of the music of this composer several times, and it's the brightness of the music she loves most. She says Schubert was composing to make sure that he's there at all. That's a motive I have also heard in the musical intervention. So thank you very much for the joint work with the students.
Sind denn in diesem Hause die Kammern all besetzt? Bin matt zum Niedersinken. Bin tödlich schwer verletzt. Ja, alles besetzt. Sehen Sie das denn nicht? Hier steht es doch. Besetzt. Ich gehe weiter, doch der nächste Weiser ist entweder umgedreht oder ganz fort. Der weist auf nichts mehr zu. Ich würde es sowieso nicht finden. Weiß nicht, woher und wohin, und schließlich auch mein Gehen gestoppt. Mein Gehen mir unter den Füßen weggezogen. Das ist nicht nett. Frau und Tochter haben mir mein Gehen weggenommen. Die waren das. Ich hab's doch gesehen. Aber vorher haben sie mir die Wegweiser alle absichtlich umgedreht. Das haben sie absichtlich gemacht. Ich kann es nur nicht beweisen, und es war auch keineswegs so gedacht, dass ich, wenn die Weiser alle umgedreht sind und ich endlich umkehren darf, wieder zu ihnen zurück kann, dass ich nach Hause darf. Ich soll gar nichts mehr dürfen. Nicht mehr gehen, nichts mehr wollen, nicht mehr wandern, nichts mehr sehen, nur das Weiß des Irrenhauses. Endstation, alles aussteigen. Und alles steigt aus. Da denkt man, dieser Weiser ist unverrückbar und das nächste Mal wird der Verrückte schon wieder wissen wollen, wohin es mit ihm geht. Doch der Weiser ist es, der verrückt ist, und jetzt weiß der Verrückte überhaupt nichts mehr, weil ja auch sein Weiser verrückt ist und nicht mehr so weise, wie er sein sollte. Könnte wohl ein Zeichen sein. Doch welches und wofür? Frau und Tochter haben ihn weggerückt. Nur ein Stück. Und schon habe ich mich nicht mehr zurechtgefunden und nicht mehr zurückgefunden. Ja, ich war es, den sie verrückt haben, nicht den Weiser, mich selbst haben sie verrückt. Den Verrückten nur ein Stück verrückt. Und er ist jetzt dort, wo keiner je ging zurück. Ich bin dort. Aber ich weiß nicht mehr, wer ist ich? Welches Ich? Ich verbinde nichts mehr damit. Auch nicht meine vom Wandern wunden Füße, meine übers Leben verwunderten Füße, meine vom Gehen abgegangenen Füße. Ich verbinde nichts mehr mit nichts. Mit diesem Weg verbinde ich nichts mehr. Ich kann keinen Verbund mehr herstellen, keine Verbindung, keinen Verband mehr wickeln, kann nichts mehr. Sind denn in diesem Hause die Kammern all besetzt? Das habe ich doch schon einmal gefragt. Keine Antwort. Schon beim ersten Mal nicht. Bin matt zum Niedersinken. Das habe ich doch auch schon mal gesagt. Entschuldigung, ich sage alles immer mehrmals, wirklich alles. Sie werden das schon gemerkt haben, wirklich alles. Alles wiederholt, weil ich sofort vergesse, was ich gesagt oder gefragt habe. Und ja, ich sehe, die Kammern sind alle besetzt. Aber irgendwie und irgendwo werden sie mich schon noch hineinquetschen. Ich bin ohne Ruhe, aber sie werden mich schon noch zur Ruhe bringen. Bitte beachten Sie, dass sich Ihr Nachbar vielleicht schon zur Ruhe begeben hat. Das haben Sie früher immer im Fernsehen gesagt, vor vielen, vielen Jahren. Jetzt erst haben Sie es erreicht. Ich habe mich zur Ruhe begeben. Gute Nacht. Das kühle Wirtshaus, in das ich eingeladen wurde, kann jetzt schließen. Es muss mich nicht mehr abweisen. Kann weiter nicht. Nicht weiter. Kann nicht. Kann nicht. Aus.